It is raining, my microphone is playing up. I don't know if you can hear this, so I'll talk at this volume and hopefully I'll get through this video with some resemblance of audio. Today it is the day after. This video is for Wednesday the 20th of December. And I started the day with no job and was looking on the CX from about 9 o'clock onwards for any work, and I put on a speculative bid going from Boston to Grays, which is obviously pretty much London area, and I don't want to go to London for my first job of the day. It was a long wheelbase job, 130 loaded miles, due to be picked up at 10:30 I think it was, and I put a bid on of £190, 190, and then forgot about it. I just assumed that'd be too much and I could get on with my day trying to find a job going north or west. About half an hour after we put the bid in, I got a call and I was offered the job, and I was given specific instructions, and I was given a WhatsApp message with a delivery note or a collection note from the company, so I knew specifically who to call and for instructions when I got into the site. So I accepted the job, got in my van, made my way towards Boston. It was 22 dead, I'm going to say dead miles, but I don't like using that term. It got me a job, so I don't really think it as being dead miles. I reckon I got paid for those miles. £190 for 130 mile loaded miles. So I call it 22 dead miles to get to the job, but I don't think it really was. I did a video yesterday about this. Dead miles is not defined specifically, so I say dead miles, I just mean miles to get to my pickup points really. I don't regard them as being dead miles in this case. Anyway, let's not get distracted. Let's move on. Oh dear. So I arrived, I was never going to get there at 10:30, that was the time of the booking, because by the time I didn't leave the house till 10:15, so I think maybe they'd been let down by somebody else and I'd got a late booking, but no one said anything. But I just made my way straight there, and I called the number on the sheet that I'd been given through WhatsApp to call my contact about 15 minutes away, and I spoke to the guy. Now I'd made an assumption, so let me go back a step. I knew, because I'd been told, I was going to the hospital to do a collection, and when you get to a hospital, I always am a bit on ease because I don't know where to go in on the site. So I thought if I've got a number, I'll call the number and get some instructions on the way, which would be really helpful. So I called the name I was given, and he answered. It was the right person, and I explained who I was, and he said he wasn't any longer on that site, and he gave me the name of another person, which confused me a bit because I thought, well, if you worked at the hospital, why have I been given your name and then you're not at the same hospital? It seems weird that you've moved on. All will become clear later on. I made the incorrect assumption that the person I'd be going to worked at the hospital, and I didn't. So I then called the second person who was on site and did know what I was coming for, and gave me some very clear instructions about where to go to. And what I was actually doing was, I wasn't actually going to the hospital, as in collecting from the hospital. I was collecting from the hospital grounds, but from the builder that's doing work there. So there's a building company that I was working to collect from, and they were the contacts I had. So obviously the first guy was like the foreman, who I suppose was originally on site but moved to a different site. And so the guy I had was the second guy's name was actually on site when I arrived, and I went to find him. So when I arrived, I managed to find a parking spot outside the sort of hut for the site office for the builders. Went inside, found the right guy, and then he introduced me to another guy who was the team leader for the area I was going to. There's like 2 building sites going on the hospital, and the guy I was given was responsible for one site, and he gave me the name of the other person. They're both very close together, basically different buildings on the same site. So I went to find the other guy who was in the same site office, and he was happy to see me. He rang through one of his colleagues who was actually on the site and told him I was coming, and directed me to go to the right place. So I got to the right area of the hospital where I'd do my collection, and found the guy that was the builder, and he was sort of busy doing something. I just asked around, and it was him that I had to find. And he pointed me out to the items I had to collect. He said there's some items there and some behind there. And I thought he was going to help me load, but he didn't. He just let me get on with it. So I did a bit of handballing of these items on. They were dirty and they were a bit fiddly, but it wasn't a big deal. I got quite dirty. My jeans got really dirty doing it, which was a bit disappointing. But I got them on, and then I went back to the sort of team leader man. I did check with the workman, have I got the right number of stuff, and he said I had. I went back to the team leader, got to Simon Pod, and asked him, I've got this number, I've got 10, is that right? He said, I don't know, I'm new on site, so if you've been told 10, then 10 is right. So I did all that I could to ensure that I had the right number of these items. Just take a drink. And then I made my way towards Grays. Now, there was a couple of routes, a couple of ways to get from Boston to that side of London. One route is sort of the back road, sort of more direct route, and the other is sort of on the A1M down to the M25 and around. And I chose to take the more direct route, specifically for one reason and one reason only. I wanted to pop into Wisbech, which is on the a direct line between Boston and the Grays, just to give my son a document that he needs from me. And so I brought it with me, and I thought if I get anywhere near where he is, I'll give it to him. This was a great opportunity to pop in to Wisbech on the way through. So I did that, and I set my heading for where he works. Now, there is a slight problem. This is where my mind is probably a bit different to most people. Just have a drink. I was very mindful that my son works at a builder's merchant, and I'm always tracked. And immediately when I realised I was going to go to this builder's merchant, I was thinking, what if my shipper thinks I'm co-loading? And I thought it's unlikely they're tracking me, because I thought they'd be way too busy. But once I thought of that, I couldn't get out of my head. And so I thought, well, if they call me and say, what are you doing? I'll just explain the truth. I'm dropping off a letter to my son. And I kept thinking about it, and I thought, actually, that's not the way to do this, is it? The way to do this is to tell them first, not wait for them to work out what you're doing, and sort of just head it all off at the pass. So I rang the shipper about 5 minutes away from the builder's merchants, and just rang them and said, by the way, I'm popping into this place to deliver a letter, I'm not co-loading. And I think the shipper was a bit surprised by me saying this, but also I think he was quite pleased that I told him. And I think also the other thing is, it got it off my mind, so as soon as I'd done that, I didn't have to worry about it anymore. It was done, it was dealt with, it was out of my head. If you have seen my 4 videos on my autistic traits, you might understand why these things bother me, and if I can get them out of my head, it's like a distraction I can get rid of. So I'm sure for lots of people, well, I'm guessing, I don't know, because I'm not in people's heads, I'm guessing that for most people they wouldn't even think twice about doing that, because they wouldn't even think it's a problem. But for people like myself, you can't just ignore these thoughts. They get intrusive and they get overwhelming. You've got to deal with them in some way. And for me, dealing with them is just sort of, I suppose, being open and honest and transparent tends to be the way that I find works. Oh, there's a lot of people going to this queue here. Let me see if I can get out. One moment while I do this manoeuvre. There we go, so I'm around. So I called them and I got that, and it's up ahead, and that was fine. So I saw my son very briefly, sort of 2 minutes, and then I was off back on the route. So I was pleased I did a good thing for my son, and I had updated the shipper. So then I made my way towards Grays, and the journey I think in total was something like 3 hours, I think. And I did something I don't usually do. And I stopped to get some. I stopped to get some fuel. That isn't the thing I don't usually do. I often do that. What I did this time was, rather than me stopping to get fuel and just moving on, I actually had a little bit of a break. I sat in the lay-by and ate some couscous, which I'd taken with me, and I just had a bit of a update on WhatsApp and stuff. I probably spent about 10 minutes just having a break. Went to the loo, and it felt a lot more laid back as a journey. I didn't feel I was letting the shipper down by having this sort of slight delay. Anyway, so I then carried on. I don't think I told you the times there. So the times that I arrived on site at the hospital at 10:50, and by the time I'd loaded up, it was 11:15 when I left site. And then it was, in the end, by the time I'd done my stop, got fuel and stuff, I'd arrived at Grays at 3:10, and I found the site quite easily. There was a couple of guys in the yard. I asked them what I should do with my load. They said go and see the guy in the warehouse. So I did that, and then got the guy to come out, and we handballed it onto a pallet, and he took the load off me. We had a little bit of a chat about, well, I'll tell you what, what actually happened was, I tried to do something I don't usually do, which is have a chat with the guy, more than just, hello, how are you? And I was saying about how's business, you know, this looks like a good thing to do, and it was just not working. He wasn't understanding what I was saying, or not just the words. He understood the words I was saying, but I was sort of trying to say, oh, this is a good business here. You got a good niche here, because they were sort of cleaning these materials. I take it back, but it didn't really lead to any sort of conversation. So I thought I'd just stop talking now and get on with this and get outside. So I then moved myself around. I was very close to IKEA, so by, I think it's Thurrock. So I went to parts in IKEA and had looked for another job, and I was mindful that I was in a very hard area to get home from, and I was probably keen to get home, so I just bid cheap on anything getting away. There wasn't a lot I bid on, but there was a job going from Basildon, which was 17 miles away, going to Hitchin, which wasn't home, but it was definitely getting me out of London, getting me away. It was 58 loaded miles for a short wheelbase van. So I bid £50, 50, and I got that pretty quickly. So I made my way. I got that job at just before 3:30, and I made my way to Basildon, about 45 minutes, and arrived to pick up one pallet. I arrived at 4 o'clock and was loaded by 4:15. And then I made my way to Hitchin. At the other end, the guy that was unloading me was really friendly. We had a little bit of a chat about Christmas. They wanted me off site quickly, so they signed my paperwork, took a quick photo of the forklift, then I got off site. And I parked outside the place. It would have been about 10 to 6? No. So it would have been about an hour after I got this, about 5:15. So maybe say about 5:30 now. and there was no jobs available, and I was only an hour and a half away from home, so I just demoed it home to get home at a reasonably good hour. I got home about 7:30, another early-ish day. It was 76 miles going home. I wasn't really bothered about the miles today, this today. I'm kind of on a slow down for Christmas. I could so easily have just had this week off work, but I just didn't feel I could necessarily just justify that, bearing in mind how it's going to be next month. So I put a bit of effort in yesterday and did 2 jobs and got home reasonably early. So let me tell you my stats for Wednesday. I did fill up with fuel, so I've got a new average fuel price. The fuel's gone down by a penny per litre, and also because the last tank of fuel I wasn't going at 70 miles an hour everywhere, I've got better fuel efficiency, which means I've got a pretty good, much lower pence per mile this week. So my average pence per mile for this week is 14.34 pence per mile, which is a good 2 pence per mile less than last week. And I think it's down to the penny per litre less and me not doing 70 miles an hour on the motorway to Scotland and back. So I did 301 miles on Wednesday. I worked for 9.25 hours. Again, quite a short day for me. I had 2 jobs that earned me £240. So the £190 going from Boston to Grays and the £50 going from Basildon to Hitchin. And that means I spent on fuel £43.18. So after fuel costs on Wednesday, I earned £197, 197. There's a couple of things that I wanted to update you about. So one is an update from yesterday's video on my late payer. And would you believe it? Would you Adam and Eve it? They paid me yesterday. So the company that I had some doubts about from October, after my email, on the same day I sent the email, they emailed back saying, "We've paid you, can you please let us know?" And so they paid me. So I've got that money, £240, £200 plus VAT in my account, which is really nice. I've now got 1 outstanding invoice and 2 kind of bad debts, I would say, that I'm never going to get back. So it's not too bad. I'm going to probably ring that company, I suppose today really, shouldn't I? I'll ring them today and see what they say. But hopefully I get that last one paid. And then the next thing I want to talk about is my thoughts on pence per mile, because again, I think having done this job for a while, I've got some thoughts that I would like to share with you guys. And I think, like all these things, it's just my opinion. We all have different perspectives on life. We all have different ways of seeing the world. We all have different priorities. But I think this is something that I would like to share about the way I see it. When you first start doing this job, it's one of the things you have to really try and get your head around, and you don't really know, is how do you price up a job? And there are a few ways of doing it. But if you're new, probably the easiest way of doing it is basing it on a pence per mile basis. So what I mean by that is, your job is posted and it says 50 miles, and it's for, let's say, a short wheelbase van. Then you go in and you say, well, I'm going to charge £1 a mile for a short wheelbase van, and it's 50 miles, so I'm going to charge £50. So the pound per mile is the pence per mile that you're kind of choosing to base your bid on, and that's quite a good starting point for someone who has no idea how to price their jobs. And then you have to take into account, for example, how far away is it from the pickup, how busy is the area you're in, how desperate are you? Is it going the right direction for you? What time of the day is it? What time of the year it is? So all these other things come into play over time as you get more and more used to pricing. So just for the moment, this conversation, just focusing on the pence per mile kind of metric. The first thing I'm going to say, everyone has, lots of people have said before, it's not unique, but I haven't heard anyone say the second thing I'm going to say. So when I think about pence per mile, I think that it's not a linear scale. So if you're going to do a short job, let's say it's a mile, 10 miles. I mean, I've done a job which is 2 miles before. You're not going to charge, let's take £1 a mile as our baseline. You're not going to charge £2 for a 2 mile job. And I hope it's obvious, because you're going to make no money, you're going to lose money doing that. Because of your fixed costs as a business, and because of your time. You can't do a 2 mile job in less than half an hour. Realistically, let's say you're putting a box on, you've got to get a pod signed. I take photos. You got to get in and out of the pickup place, in and out of the drop-off place. Might be traffic. So, if at that point pence per mile doesn't work at low mileage rates, and you can choose at what point is your minimum charge. So I happen to choose £50 as being my minimum for any job that I do. I have gone lower, but I try not to. So if I'm doing a small van job, I would do £50 as my minimum price. And I don't often get that, because there are often small van drivers that will get it for 40 or 35, or if it's really busy, £25. But I just don't go any lower. For a long wheelbase job, my lowest price is £60. So anything that's around about 40 miles or less, maybe 50 miles or less, that sort of figure, I'm always going to charge at least £60 for a long wheelbase job, because of the time it takes to do the job more than anything else. And for me, £60 is roughly, and after costs, about an hour and a half of my time. I base my time roughly on £30 an hour. So if you take off business costs, costs of doing a 2 hour job, roughly, so an hour and a half job, roughly 60 quid would cover my time, give or take. So that's why I've kind of pitched my costs at that. But you might have a minimum price of 50 or 40 or even less. You might have a small van, you might have a Luton, I don't know, maybe I've no idea what Lutons do. They might have a different way of approaching it. So, obviously, you can't work out a job price at pence per mile at the lower end. When you get above, say, 50 miles, I tend to pretty much go with pence per mile as my baseline, and I'll add a bit on, or I'll take a little bit off, depending on the situation. But think about the other extreme. Think about the very long jobs. So I've had a quick look today, and I would say that if you stay on mainland Britain, you went from Land's End to John O'Groats, which is pretty much the longest single journey you could do. It's going to be about 750 to 800 miles. So the most you could do in this country is about 750 miles. And whether you could do that in one day or not is probably debatable. You probably could do 700 miles in one day. It'd be a full-on day. But let's just say that's a sake of argument. So let's say you've got a 700 mile journey and you're doing £1 a mile for, let's say it's a short wheelbase van job. So you might think, well, £700 is a fair bid for that, if you just do it on pence per mile. Well, I think at that point, you probably end up getting into the realms of day rates. So I'm prepared to work for a day for £300, because that covers my business costs and my fuel. Maybe £350 to be absolutely certain I'll get, if I spend a lot on fuel. So let's say £350 would be sort of the least I would want to get for a day rate. Now, if I'm going to be driving 350 miles, I might bid £350. If I'm going to be driving 400 miles, it's still going to take me about the same amount of time. I might still bid £350. maybe 360, depends on the thing. I'm not going to bid £500 for a 500-mile job because I don't think that I would get it. I think that there are people that will do the work for less because they do it for a day rate. And I would actually do a day rate for £400 and be really happy about that. So if I was going to drive 500 miles, I'd do that in a day. And if I got paid £400, I'd consider that as being not a bad day. But let's say I went for £700, 700 miles. I might go for £500 for that day. So I'm not adding, it's not a linear amount of money adding on. Now, whether I do or don't do the job, there's a whole lot of other reasons why I won't do it. But my point about this video is, when you work out the pence per mile for the very long trips, just saying I'm going to do it like for £1 a mile, because I usually do that for a 300-mile job to a 600-mile job, I think isn't going to work. You might find that makes logical sense, but you're not going to get the jobs, I don't think. I think that people getting a day rate then tend to kind of, i.e. getting your jobs based on time, not distance. Because another way of working out jobs is how long is a job going to take you. Because if you knew you want to get paid, let's say £30 an hour, and you're going to work for 10 hours in a day, you could just bid on every job based on how long the job will take you, based on your hourly rate. That's another way of pricing up jobs. So if you're going to go a very long distance, and you know it's going to take you 12 hours, well, maybe the way to price a job is not per mile, but per hour. 12 hours times £30. In my case, it would be £360. So there, I think in that respect, what I'm trying to say is, at the upper end of the mileage, the pence per mile tails off, as well as at the lower end of the mileage, is a minimum charge, so it tails up, as it were. So the graph, I'm thinking of a graph, has like a curve at the bottom and a curve at the top. In the middle, it's a reasonably straight line. So like an S-curve shape. You think about price per mile on the vertical axis and number of miles on the horizontal axis. So I think that's a way that I see pence per mile and bidding on jobs. And I accept that you're not all going to agree with that, and that's fine. I'm going to end this video now. This is for Wednesday, and then I'm going to give you my last video of the year for today, when it's dark and I finish what I'm doing. So, if you are one of those brilliant, amazing drivers or shippers that is fair, professional, polite, I hope you are so successful and prosperous. Thank you for listening.